welcome to Kiwi Country. I'm here in the Bicentennial Park with the bust of Tex Morton. Join us to watch our special series on this amazing New Zealander. Welcome back to Kiwi Country, and I'm here today with Max Ellis. Now Max, you knew Tex Morton.
Yes, I was very fortunate to know the great man, and he was a great man, by the way. He was an incredible talent, probably the most charismatic and talented country music singer that we've ever seen in this country. Yeah. And I was fortunate because we involved Tex from the early days of the Country Music Awards. We started the awards in 1973, and I think we honoured Tex with the Roll of Renown in 1976. So I had the enormous privilege of presenting him with the Roll of Renown, the Country Music Roll of Renown. And so
wow, that's amazing.
We then did quite a number of shows with Tex over the years, and worked closely with him. And he was probably the best raconteur, best storyteller you could imagine.
Yeah.
He always had a story about whatever you were talking about, and it was always fascinating.
Yeah, well, he was so varied in his entertainment and in his take on the entertainment industry. It was really, I just really discovered him really quite recently, and I was asked to sing at the Roll of Renown, and they said, "You're from Nelson, how about you do a Tex Morton song?" I thought, oh, okay, this will be fun, and that was when I really started to discover, and I found out my mother-in-law said, Barbara Lane's a good friend of mine who's the sister, and just one thing rolled to another, and I saw the bust here, and then I thought, and I ended up featuring in the magazine here and featuring in a magazine in Nelson with the same photo, and I thought, he's not recognised in Nelson like he is recognised here.
It's interesting, in Australia, Tex is recognised as the father of Australian country music, and I've been to Nelson a few times, and I've always been shocked that there's nothing in Nelson except one very small plaque hidden away in a corner that records the fact that Tex was born in Nelson and grew up there. And it's a shame, really, because he was such a huge character and such a
huge influence.
A huge influence on so many people.
Yeah.
And all the major Australian artists of the 30s and 40s, like Buddy Williams, Tex Morton, Smokey Dawson and so on, they were all hugely influenced by Tex because he was the first.
Yeah.
The first, when he started singing, he actually started singing mostly American songs, but he quickly realised that people in Australia wanted to hear Australian songs.
Yeah.
And so he started writing Australian material and really set up the whole of the country music scene for decades that followed.
Right, and I just, maybe we should actually make a change, maybe we should do something about that. Maybe we should work together and do something about getting recognition for him.
Well, we have an incredible, almost double life-size bust, bronze bust of Tex in the park, quite close to where we are now. And I'd love to see a copy of that be presented to the Nelson Council and put in somewhere in the beautiful malls that they have in Nelson. It's a beautiful town.
Yes, it is.
And there should be something there that recognises one of their most famous citizens.
Well, here's hoping that we can work something out. So you've got a few tales. I was just reading something that you handed me. I love this tale that's in here about Tex Morton's manager. Do you want to tell us that story?
Well, look, as I said, Tex is an incredible raconteur. I've never heard anyone tell stories like Tex. I've stood in the big circus tent we had here with the awards, and Tex was talking about how he was in America once and a big tent blew away when he was in the middle of a show, and that was Tex. He had a story about everything. Yeah. But this story relates to one of Tex's managers when he was in America. He was in America from about 1949 to the late 50s, and he was managed by a man called Oscar Davis, who was a very well-known, quite a famous entrepreneur and manager. And Tex tells the story how one day he was with Oscar Davis, and Oscar Davis was on the phone talking to someone and obviously doing a deal with this person, And he turned round, he hung up, he laughed, and he turned round and he said, "I've just sold the boy to silly old Tom Parker." Now that boy was Elvis Presley, and Oscar Davis was credited with being one of the people that discovered Elvis Presley. And he introduced Elvis to Tom Parker, and he sold Elvis as an act to Tom Parker.
And Tex was sitting there to be able to
And
tell
Tex
that
was
story.
there to tell the story.
So Tex had these experiences, and then he
Yeah.
was able to tell the story
Absolutely.
of the experience.
And Tex rubbed shoulders with all sorts of famous Western stars like Gene Autry, Hank Williams, of course,
Yeah.
in the States in the 40s. And he was not only a singer, of course, but an actor,
Yes.
a great actor, and also a hypnotist, a stage hypnotist.
Yeah.
And he appeared in all sorts of venues like Carnegie Hall in New York, and he was an incredible man.
Right.
He was just brilliant at everything he did.
Right.
And he unfortunately tended to move from one thing to another. He'd get sick of
Yep.
doing something
Yeah.
and say, "Well, I'm bored with this, I'll go and be an actor again."
Yeah.
And he was just a fantastic character.
Oh, look, that's amazing tales. Hey, look, thank you very much for joining us. It's
My
been a
pleasure.
real honour to talk to you, and I think we might need to work on getting some recognition for him.
Anything that can boost the reputation of Tex Morton, I'm really all for.
That's fantastic. Thanks for joining us on
Good.
Kiwi
My
Country
pleasure.
today. Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Ali.
An actor's success may sometimes turn his head, and he feels that without him, we cannot do. Oh, but there's none in this race that we cannot replace. From old age to youth in its teens. For instance, a sight I witnessed one night in a theater behind the scenes. The call boy was shouting, intense, announcing the play to commence when the star cried, "Wait, I'm just a little bit late." But that curtain went up, and the show, it was great. "I'll never be ready," the star loudly cried. "Well, I shouldn't worry," someone replied, "for if you're not ready, you can pack up and get. The show will go on just the same. Never fret. And there's another fellow waiting to take your place, and he knows every line, every move on your face. No, the show don't depend on you to exist. And if you're displeased, you'll never be missed. And you'll find, friends, it's just the same in your everyday life. Each one of us wants an important role. But in striving for wealth, you're gonna sacrifice your health and all just to reach a high goal. And when your wealth you've attained and your purpose you've gained, you're just like that fool in the play. You think, no doubt, without your presence, this old world couldn't last, not a day. But just when you've made a big start, you might suddenly be called to depart. But the world will go on just the same. Never fret. Your absence, in fact, may break nobody's heart. So always be ready to pack up and get. The old world will go on just the same. Never fret. And your absence, in fact, may break nobody's heart. Now you die. And you go to, well, it matters not where. For a thoroughbred here is a thoroughbred there. And there are some who are born pound foolish, and some penny wise, but 6 feet of earth makes us all the same size. Yes, you may feel important. You may feel important down here while you exist. But after you're gone, you'll never be missed.
Other cheerless think I'm handsome, their fathers think I'm mad, their mothers think I'm a villain, but I'm just a lovable lad. I'm loved by the poor and the wealthy, loved by the good and the bad, loved by the fat and the skinny, because I'm a lovable lad. It's a dangerous game I'm playing, you've got to be quick to last. When you're at the wrong end of a shotgun, you run quick or cop the full blast. You'll never see me linger where there are sour old tarts, and you can tell where I have been by the trail of broken hearts. So parents, do take warning and heed what I say. Keep your daughters out of sight when I come round your way. They say I'm just like Casanova, I drink, I smoke, I swear. They say I'm the sheik of Scrubby Creek, but I don't care.
Welcome back to Kiwi Country, and I'm so honoured to have Chad Morgan with me, a legend of Australian country music. And Chad actually met Tex Morton. So tell us what kind of man he was that you knew.
Well, he was, in my opinion, the ultimate showman. He's one of the best. I learned a lot of my trade from him.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate that back in the 60s, Tex worked on the show with me for about 6 months, and we on the showgrounds travelling around, and we had a lot of the same interests. We both loved fishing, we loved shooting, we both had Ford cars, we were both into electronics, and we just had a lot of fun together.
And what about horses? That was a bit of a love as well, wasn't it?
It was, but not with me because I had a busted leg, so I
Right.
couldn't do that. But it didn't stop us riding a bar stool every now and again.
And so you travelled with the show then, or were you stationed in one place, or you just went round everywhere with the show?
We went round everywhere with the shows all over Australia for about 6
Right.
months. Yeah. But, yeah, he was a very funny man at times. He was also a very serious man. And he couldn't stand an idiot, and neither can I. But
Right.
He couldn't suffer a fool.
He couldn't suffer a fool.
No.
He's a good Kiwi bloke from Nelson then, that's what that is. It's interesting because I'm talking to people in New Zealand as well that knew him before. The influence, the impact that he had on the bush balladeering kind of side of Australian country music. And
As far as all of us are concerned, he was the father of it.
yeah.
My first record I can remember when I was 4 years old was a Tex Morton record, and
Yeah.
when I got my first guitar, I copied a lot of his runs off the record. And
That's a common run through the people that I've
Yeah.
spoken to, that everybody actually learned their
Yeah.
guitar runs
Yeah.
from off the putting the needle on the record
Yeah.
and actually sitting there with the guitar and learning how he played.
Yeah.
It's fabulous. So he was quite a funny guy too. Like could he be
Yes, he liked a good joke. He liked the practical joke too.
I've sort of tracked down some television footage that I've got some of the early television New Zealand footage of him, but also I saw a monologue that he did at Gold Guitars. So he's very amazing at speaking, and just like he lit a cigarette and he was very like, he just delivered this monologue. He looked like he'd floored the room,
Oh yes, he was, and not like some of the younger ones today. He always dressed immaculate.
Right.
Which I copied him a bit because I tried
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you copied his dress code as well, because you're pretty immaculate.
when we were on the showground, we were the two best dressed men on the showgrounds.
I'm not surprised at that. Hey, I know you've got to get away
No, it's
because
all
you've
right.
been busy here, but thank you very much for joining us today. I'm very honoured to have you on Kiwi Country.
It's a pleasure.
And I'm sure you've enjoyed playing here tonight. So tell me, have you been to every single Tamworth, or how many Tamworths have you been to?
Well, I haven't missed one since 1982, but I've been to them before that. But,
Right.
I was at the first one back in the 70s, but
Wow. That's
but
fantastic.
I haven't missed one since 1982.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chad. We really, really appreciate your time.
No,
Thank
it's
you.
a great pleasure. Good day to all my friends in New Zealand. Both islands. Good on you.
Hi and welcome back to Kiwi Country, and of course we're on our Tex Morton special. I've got Kevin Greaves with me. Now Kevin, your dad was Rusty Greaves, so tell us about your dad.
Well, yeah, Dad was one of the pioneers of country music. He travelled all over New Zealand, you know, before the days of TV, and they had radio hits. In fact, I was recently in Stebbings, and they gave me some facts that I didn't know about. One of his, you know, the 45s,
Yeah.
the singles, sold over 25,000 copies, which is, and that was in like 61 or something around, you know, something like that, you know. So yeah, but I guess in those days,
Phenomenal for New Zealand.
Yeah,
It's like,
you know,
that's the big numbers are sort of something with talking to other
Muleskin
people.
and Blues.
Yeah.
Was Muleskin and Blues.
Muleskin and Blues. So he would have known Tex Morton then, wouldn't he?
Oh, very well. They
Yeah.
because they were on the he was on the Country Touch of Country series with Tex was the host of.
Yeah.
But they toured together a fair bit, and I remember in between those two shows, toured all over New Zealand as a two-man show. You know, Tex had all sorts of skills from. You probably know from hypnotism to sharpshooting to you know.
He was the jack of all trades, wasn't he?
And so Dad would open the show.
Yeah.
And then Tex would come rolling in and be on the side of the wings and give him the thumbs up, so I'm ready to go on now, and he'd stop and introduce Tex, and away he'd go. So what Tex would do apparently, he would go down while Dad was doing his show, he'd go down and find the local pub and have a couple of drinks while he was, you know, and then when he's finished, so yeah, this one particular night, I remember Dad telling me the story about he was on stage and he's singing away, and he looked at the side wings and no Tex yet, and he'd sing another song, but no, still no another song, and this kept going on for a while, and Tex must have been having a good time down, having a few more drinks down there, and he got to it, and he said, and he started singing the song. It was Freight Train Yodel, and he was just got into the first few words of it and started, and he thought, well, this is a Tex Morton song, and then sure enough, he looked to the left, and here was Tex standing there going. But he made from that time, from that part on, he made Dad sing that song every night. So.
Oh. So Tex Morton, of course, in Australia was extremely revered, as we've talked about, and we're here today at the Gallery of Stars at the Tamworth Museum, and there is actually a wax figurine here because it's a wax museum, but unfortunately about a month ago Tex fell over in the middle of the night. So I'm just wondering if that was about the same time as the Kaikoura earthquake. Maybe he fell down in sympathy. But anyway, he's away being repaired, so we can't show you the wax museum figure. But this is the gold guitar, beautiful gold guitar that Tex Morton won, and it shows you just how the man was actually revered. That he's here not only in the Auckland Museum as part of the country music display with volume up in Auckland, but also here at the Gallery of Stars in Tamworth. Hi and welcome back to Kiwi Country, and I'm here with Peter Code, who is the President of the Bush Balladeers Association Australia, and we of course are continuing our series of interviews with Australian artists about Tex Morton. So Tex Morton was an influence on you, Peter?
Tex Morton was a great influence on me because as a child, or very young, I taught myself to play guitar from the Tex Morton records by playing them over and over and over to learn the guitar runs that Tex Morton used, to learn his songs.
Yeah.
And we came from our far out back of South Australia, and we had no TV when I was a kid.
Yes.
We only had the old hillbilly programs with all hillbilly music, and we had the old records with Tex Morton and other hillbilly artists. But Tex Morton, he stood out among other artists as a guitar player, and most of us kids in that time learnt to play Tex Morton guitar style because he was the ultimate was to learn Tex Morton.
And he had his own make of guitars. Did you ever see any of those?
I do have a Tex Morton guitar.
You've got one of the
I've
white
got
ones.
a Tex Morton guitar. The big, there was two models that I know of. In the round hole guitar, round sound hole, I've got the bigger one, which came from New Zealand. It's made in New Zealand, and I've got it, and it still plays quite well. Yeah. And it's obviously quite old, but it still plays quite well.
My luthier's got a good collection of them back in Nelson. Of course, I'm from Nelson, so I'm from the same town as Tex Morton. So he came over here, and of course he really influenced the growth of the Bush Balladeer movement.
Well, I think it was, and I think it was idolised by people who later became stars, superstars virtually in Australia, but they were influenced, I believe, very much so by Tex Morton and the success of Tex Morton, and I think we owe so much to Tex Morton. Our country music owes so much,
Is founded with him, So a lot of people refer to him as the grandfather or the father of Australian country music.
Right.
So do you think, did you ever get a chance to actually see him on stage yourself?
No, I never got a chance to meet Tex Morton. I've seen videos of him, film of him, but I didn't. He was here at the Tamworth. In this very area where they had a big tent here for the awards way back then, in this very area where we are today, and for some reason Tex didn't appear, so we never ever got to see Tex Morton live. So that's one of the regrets, because I actually had worked with some of the other people in Australia, Buddy Williams, etc., and travelled with some of those folks, but never met Tex Morton, who was my idol.
I know, it's amazing. Today, already I'm up to interview number 2, and I had Graham Roger in here before, and he referred to him as his idol, and said how he used to put the needle on the record.
There's so many Tex Morton stories. Even like when I started full-time professionally in music, there were so many people who had travelled with the Tex Morton Upriding show who worked with Tex Morton, and the stories they could tell. Some of them were wild and far out, and the hardships on the road, and the time the trucks rolled over and the horses got out, and all these things. But there were so many great stories from Tex Morton. People still alive, people who were, and I just love that sort of thing.
I think with his travelling road show, he created his own stories to write about too. I was thinking about Mandrake as one of the songs that I had to, a couple of years ago, they asked me to perform because I was from Nelson at the Roll of Renown, and that was where I grew my first respect for him, was when I had to actually do an interpretation of that song and sing it. And it was not, I chose it because the pony that I had was the nastiest little pony that used to buck you off continually, and I thought, yes, this is the song I relate to. But then when it came to learning it and doing it, it was actually quite tricky. It's not simple, not simple at all. There's there's a technicality in what he does.
Well, I actually met a man. It was a man who used to work in Oakey up on the Darling Downs at the hotel where I used to perform, and he actually travelled with the Tex Morton show, and he actually had ridden the rough horses. And he experienced all that, and they were those wonderful stories those people would tell. Unbelievable. It will never happen again, and it could never happen again. That excitement of it all.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks very much for joining us today, Peter. I'm really very honoured to have you on the show and to have you speak about a fellow Nelsonian like that.
Thank you so very much. My idol.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Hi and welcome back to Kiwi Country. And I'm here with the lovely Johnny Greenwood, and I'm very honoured to have on the show. And last night at Tamworth Country Music Festival, you picked up an award. Hold that up for us.
I did. I picked up the Tex Morton Award, Ellie, and you know, you pick up these things when you've been around 50 years or so, you know.
Something else to put on the shelf for you. Now, of course, in these series we're talking now about Tex Morton, and Johnny had quite a relationship over the years with Tex Morton and his music.
I did know Tex. I first met him in 1961. I think it was in the hotel in Sydney near the town hall down there, because the artists all used to drink there and so forth. You know, the Criterion Hotel, I think it was. And it was in 1961, and I somehow got hold of Tex's number. I was staying with Pat Ware, and they would have known Tex's number, Pat and Joy Ware. And so I rang him up and he said, yes, I'll be down at the Criterion Hotel about 3 o'clock, you know. And our Tex used to talk. Did you meet him yourself?
No, not at all. So this is like, for me, is a journey, because I'm from Nelson, New Zealand. So I come from the same, it's my same hometown. And so I'm on a quest of discovery, as it were, about this person from Nelson who's not very recognised in New Zealand, but yet is referred to as the father of country music in Australia.
The father of country music, yes. Well, he first started recording here in 1936. I don't think there was any, there might have been a couple of other people, but they weren't as original as Tex, you know.
Yeah.
Tex was really called the father of country music here, as you know that, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he came, and so you listened to his records earlier on.
I did,
and
many people here in Australia were very influenced by Tex, because I think in the late 30s, from the mid 30s and the early 40s, right through the mid 40s, Tex almost had on his own, except, you know, Buddy Williams came along and then gave Tex a bit of opposition, I think. But he was very, very popular, and because he had his travelling show all around Australia and so forth, and but many were, even some of the New Zealanders like Tex Morton and Cole Wilson and the Tumbleweeds, and Les Wilson, of course, which I knew them both, and they were very influenced by Tex. Although Les sang more in the style of Will Carter, he was still very influenced by Tex. You know?
So he was a great influence, and a lot of people looked up to him. That was obviously, you know, he was very popular. How popular would you say that Tex Morton was in Australia at that time?
Well, I think in the late 30s and early 40s, I think he more or less held Australia in the palm of his hand as far as country music was concerned.
Right.
And, but then as other people come along, Smokey Dawson and June Holmes and Shirley Toms and Slim Dusty and Gordon Parsons, of course.
So basically cut the road.
Yes,
the beginning
and,
of the road.
and Tex was here till about 1949, and then I think he went back to New Zealand and off to America, of course, you know.
Right.
And he was quite successful in America as a hypnotist and.
He was a real showman. So and you both had a song called The Gundawundi Grey.
Yes, well, we did. That's right, we did.
Yeah.
I had a song that I'd written myself, and I tried to get it recorded with RCA, and at first they didn't seem to want to touch it, but then they decided to record it. But in the meantime, a song that was written by Nev Horrocks and Brian Wallace, I think, from Kingaroy, and Tex picked that one up, and it was the first time that a record came out with the picture records. It had a picture of Gun Sind and Tex on the cover of the single record. So that was a bit of opposition alone. I was on RCA, and they put mine out with a picture of I think Roy Higgins on Gun Sin on the front cover. It was just a black and white cover, but Texas was very had a very artistic or impressed by Texas one, because it was on the picture records. Nothing much had been on picture records before. The whole picture of Tex and Gun Sin was actually on the record.
Right, so he was a first on that too.
He was, and the thing is, Tex was recorded in Sydney. I recorded mine in Brisbane at the time, and mine was going very well in Queensland. It got on the hit parade charts, and also in Victoria and Tasmania, and Texas came in a bit later. But so I got the advantage of selling a lot of recordings before Texas actually
before he dropped his Gundawindi Grey in the market.
That's right.
Not very often would you get two songs of the same name like that. But yeah, it's pretty rare.
And the great name of Tex Morton, and of course his this particular record, which was a bit unusual, and it just hit the market, and it was a big one for Tex. But Tex was I've always felt a very clever man.
Yeah.
And he did different things. Of course, as I say, he was a hypnotist over there and in the States, and he told me once he was one of the inaugurations of the President Eisenhower or something, I think.
Right. Oh, just amazing. Look, we're loving the stories that we're getting here tonight at the Back to Bush concert, and it's fantastic. Hey, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the show, Johnny. That's just
the one other thing I might say, Ali, is that when mine was out and then Tex came up, and he came up to Queensland, and I think he arranged to put his records in the shops and everything. I started to feel, I know how Buddy Williams must have felt back in the 40s with the opposition of Tex, you know, because so my record was going fantastic in Queensland, then Tex came up and of course started pushing mine back a bit, but we still were on the hit parade, and that wasn't the country charts, it was the hit parade charts.
Right.
And initially I was on them in Queensland and down south, I think. But Tex came on as well, and they put Tex Morton, Johnny Greenwood on the...
Fantastic. Well, we're going to wind it up now because we're going to go to a clip and play that. But thanks very much for joining us today. We're really honoured to have had you speak to us. Thank you, John.
Thanks very much for having me, Ali.
You.
Well, here's a number I wrote some time ago for no particular reason. I think it was sparked off by some casual remark in a bar of some kind, maybe a milk bar. But I apologize not at all for the philosophy in this song because, well, I mean every word of it. It's a novelty number, and I hope you like it. Oh, I'm so sorry for you as you rough it in here. Cash in your pocket, sipping your beer. Oh, you don't understand, it's tough now, he says. Not like it was in your good old days. Ho, ho, ho. They stand and they moan with the beer in their hand. They say a depression's all over the land. But carry a swag or walk with a bike. Ha! If ever they get one, they'll know what it's like. Good old days, wonderful days. Tell me again of those good old days. Pardon me, boys, if I don't join the praise of those wonderful good old days. I worked hard at school, and I earned a big scrawl, but I couldn't even get work on the dole. So I sang an old song and I passed round the hat. They put me in jail just for trying to do that. Round all the missions, nightly I'd stand, holiest bum in the whole hungry land, waiting for supper, knew all the hymns, bless the good ladies, converted again. Good old days, wonderful days. Tell me again of those good old days. Pardon me, boys, if I do not join in the praise of those wonderful good old days. Your father and I tramped all over this land, searching for work or a kind helping hand, sleeping out nights, froze to the skin. Suppose if we had to, we'd do it again. Good old days, wonderful days. Tell me again of those good old days. Pardon me, boys, if I don't join the praise of those wonderful
do get tough, and there's always the chance you'll have to get up off the seat of your pants. Hungry you'll sleep to the click of the wheels. Many's the time, more meal times than meals. Sure, there's some out of work, but there's lots earning pay. They keep all the bludgers who like it that way. This town's full of hippies and lay about crumbs, but please don't insult us by calling them bums. Oh yeah. So if things do get bad, as they did once before, off comes your hair, boy. You're ready for war. 3 meals a day, your bed, everything. And if you get back, remember to sing. Good old days, wonderful days. Don't talk to me of those good old days. I only hope we don't see them again, those not so good old days.
Hi, I'm Max Ellis, and you're watching Kiwi Country TV.
Hi there, I'm Diane Lindsay from Australia, and you're watching Kiwi Country TV.
Hello, I'm Peter Code and you're watching Kiwi Country TV.
Hi, I'm Chad Morgan and you're watching Kiwi Country, the best TV in New Zealand.